Anin indaway maganiduk, nagagoy gitimagas. Bine sequay to go makwendo dam, gababani kag, ishkani ganing and dunjiba migwich. Thanks very much. The honor of being here with you tonight. That's where I'm from. Anishinaabe King, White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota. In my territory, Zugipu and Aguaching, there's a lot of snow on the ground. A lot of snow, it's good. It's really happy to see a good freeze on the lake. Things that you used to take for granted, you know? I'm like, oh, thank you. You're praying for it to be super cold, and then about a week and a half later, you're like, dang. In our language, this month is called Gichimanadu-Gizis, the Great Spirit Moon, and it's followed by a moon, Onabana-Gizis, the sucker moon, talking about a kind of fish. They move under the ice. Then Onabana-Gizis, Nimibina-Gizis, and Onabana-Gizis, that's also known as the hard-crusted snow moon. Does that mean anything to you? You know what I mean? It's like it freezes and it thaws and it freezes again, right? Also known as the moon you don't want to do a face plant in the snow. Then we have Iskigama-Zikigizis, that's a maple syruping moon. Then we have a moon that's called Wabagana-Gizis, the flower moon. Odamana-Gizis, the strawberry moon. Mean-Gizis, that's the blueberry moon. Then we have a moon that's called Manomanake-Gizis, or our wild rice-making moon. Our wild rice-making moon, which is usually around August, it goes into September. Watibaga-Gizis, when the leaves change color. Gashkadno-Gizis, that's around November when it freezes up. Those are some of our moons. I don't know if you, and I wanted to share them with you. But I don't know if you noticed that, did you notice that none of those moons is named after a Roman emperor? Did y'all get that? I just want to point out that it's possible to have an entire worldview that has nothing to do with empire. You'll be okay. Feel like it's kind of like time to let that stuff go. It's really some painful bags to carry. So this is some art by the Roy Thomas Sabun, but in our territory, it's Anishinaabe art. A lot of you have seen this kind of art because you're from up here and you get cool art. I show this slide in a lot of places and they're like, what? And I was like, oh, this is what our art looks like. This is our worldview. And this piece is called We Are All in the Same Boat. So that's what I feel like we're at. You know, in our teachings, there's this prophecy that talks about this time as the time of the seventh fire. And in that time, it said we'll have a choice between two paths, two mikana. One path they say is well-worn, but it is scorched. And the other path they say is not well-worn, and it is green. And it is our choice upon which path to embark. That's what our prophets told us a long, long time ago, but I'm pretty sure that's not just by Anishinaabe people. I feel like that's where we all are, this moment in time when we have the spiritual opportunity to do the right thing. Spiritual opportunity. So let me talk about what I think it looks like. I'm going to start with where I think we should be, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what's wrong, and then I'm going to get back to where we should be. So that guy down there with the crazy orange hair from that shithole of a city, Washington, D.C., of course, he talks about this thing called making America great. So I want to talk about making America great, or making North America great. My idea is when you have 8,000 varieties of corn. That's when America is great. Tremendous agrobiodiversity, and everyone had food and knew where it came from. You know, pretty tremendous gift that indigenous people gave. And all those varieties, a lot of those seeds were selected by women, because women are the best at seed selection, because not only do we cook most of the food, but we know how it keeps. Or it doesn't keep, or how it tastes, you know? Sometimes I get a squash that got a little too frisky with another squash and it don't taste right, you know? So I'm just saying, women are good seed selectors, and to get 8,000 varieties, that's pretty good, huh? Way before those Monsanto guys or any of those guys, right? America was great when we had 50 million buffalo. That's when America was great. And the buffalo that were in the northern plains in our territory that came into Canada, this territory over here, you know, they had 250 species of grass to live on in the prairies. That's the biodiversity that existed. That's when it was great. When we had that tremendous biodiversity, or when we had 1 billion passenger pigeons that would traverse, you know, at any time. That's when it was great. This is our territory. This is our sacred food here. That's when America was great, when there was wild rice or monomen everywhere. It's now receded and down to a small territory, and that is our territory. But wild rice or monomen was much more widespread. But this is Nana Bushu and Nokomis, and they're out looking at wild rice. So the time between these conflicts is, I think, kind of like this moment, right? You know, we could talk about it as colonialism and neo-colonialism, or we could talk about it just as some bad thinking. You know, we could talk about a lot of paradigms, but it is two worldviews that are very much at odds here. You know, an indigenous worldview, and you know, the term I use is the Windigo worldview, or the Windigo economy. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on, but it's not just, you know, it's not just capitalism. It's like capitalism on steroids. And that's where we're at. And its levels of extraction, its levels of behavior are just like the ravages of Windigo. But fortunately, many of us come from peoples who have slayed Windigos. We have slayed them, and we have monster slayers in our histories and in our genealogies. So I remember that, you know, when I look out there. So I'm going to tell you a little story about a pipeline. You guys all know these pipeline stories. This is my territory, the land of all that wild rice, the land of, you know, tremendous agrobiodiversity. I'm like writing and being a little farm girl on my reservation, protecting my wild rice, and I hear this announcement that the Enbridge Corporation out of Calgary want to put first one pipeline called the Sandpiper through my territory. That pipeline was going to come from the Bakken, and it was going to be a 640,000 barrel per day pipeline. And as you can see, what we have in northern Minnesota is 6 old pipelines in an old corridor. That's that northern line. There are 6 Enbridge lines in there that have been coming out of Calgary for 50 years. They were put in the 1960s before any laws, Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, run across our territories with, you know, without a lot of knowledge of what's going on. So we got 6 old Enbridge pipelines coming out of the tar sands, and then they want to bust a new route across my reservation to bring a new pipeline in from the Bakken oil fields. And so my community, you know, I didn't know much about pipelines 5 years ago. A lot of us probably didn't know a lot about pipelines. You know, I'm actually not as opposed to pipelines. I really like water and sewer. I think that pipes themselves are not a bad thing. It just depends on what's in it, right? You know what I'm saying is, like, I think we got to think about that, because it's not the pipe itself, it's what's in it, right? It's my problem. But so they announced that, and I got to start getting educated about all these things like pressure per square inch and what a pig is, pipeline inspection gauge, you know, that'll go in and tell you if you're going to have a problem in your pipe, and like all this stuff. And so we learned about this pipeline, and then we went out, and I spent a lot of time working in my own community to get us, you know, to understand what's coming our way. And then I went out and I spent a lot of time organizing my non-native neighbors. And most of those people are like Norwegians and Swedes and Finns and Germans. They're Scandinavians. And I developed this theory that if you could get the Norwegians mad, this would be a good thing. Because they're a very persistent bunch and they're plucky, you know. So we built this multiracial alliance to oppose this pipeline that Enbridge wanted to bring through our territory, this fracked oil pipeline. And you know, we rode our horses together. I dreamed we should ride our horses against the current of the oil, and so we rode for a lot of miles. This one cowboy and Indians. There was like only one cowboy. It was a cowboy and Indians. And then we rode and we prayed. We had ceremony together. We had a lot of community events, and we filed a lot of regulatory proceedings. And finally, we forced the state of Minnesota through a court ordered, because they appealed it, and then was finally court ordered to do an environmental impact statement on this proposed 640,000 barrel per day pipeline crossing through a state that has no oil, right? Brand new route. And we fought them for 4 years. I showed up at almost every hearing, and what I know is that on August 2nd of 2016, the Enbridge Corporation announced the cancellation of that pipeline. Now, this is the Sand Pipeline. So I stand here in front of you as a proud member of a community that fought a pipeline for 4 years. And 1 year after our last sacred ride on that line, they canceled that line. They canceled that pipeline. So I come from a community that defeated pipeline. But we did not defeat the system, you know, and what Enbridge did is it went to North Dakota and purchased 38% of the Dakota Access Pipeline. That's what they did. And they, I was funny because we had these guys, they coming to us. Enbridge had these tribal relations specialists. We referred to them as the Indian Whisperers. And they came to talk to our people and explain why we would want their pipeline. And it didn't work out. We kept burning through the Indian Whispers. And so then finally they gave me someone, their name is Linda Cody, and a lot of you know her out here. She worked for Macmillan Bloedel too, and she works for Enbridge now. She's a community relations person. We call her the Indian Listener. As I sent her out to listen to us, and I said, is your hearing impaired? How many times do you have to say no? What I'm saying is it's still the same answer, no. And she kept asking me what I wanted. I said no pipeline and renewables. That's what I want. But anyway, so when they cancel our pipeline, I was in a meeting with her, and I told her, it was just a few days later, I said, Linda, I feel like you cheated on me. I said, for 4 years, you said, we're the one and only route. Literally, the only possible route. I said, and then one day, you just drop us. Go to North Dakota. And this was right when it was in August or early September. I said, there's a lot of Indians out there. Did you notice that, Linda? And she's like, yeah. I said, and there's more coming, So what I want to say is that's our experience is that, we fought them off, but they went someplace else. And, we went out there, and this is what we saw. This is what it looks like when you get hit with a bunch of stuff by the military. This is what it looks like when they put dogs on your people. And when this happened, the day after this happened, when the security forces put dogs on our people, I called Linda Cody. I texted her and I wrote her a letter, and I said, Enbridge has an Aboriginal people's policy. That policy says that you do consultation with tribes. That policy is that you respect our sacred sites. That policy says is that you have a working relationship, and so you need to demilitarize it out there. You need to stop. You need to tell them to do a full environmental impact statement. You need to say it, you need to talk to the tribes. And the Enbridge Corporation did nothing. They did nothing. And so we hold them responsible for 38% of the injuries, 38% of the 840 arrests, all the tanks and all the bullets. We hold them responsible because they had an opportunity to do something. This is what we faced. And what they did with us is the piece of equipment on the right is known as an MRAP, a mine-resistant armored personnel carrier, intended for Iraq. That's where it's intended for. It's intended to drive through the building. And there's actually not a building in North Dakota that would probably qualify for that. There's 700,000 people in all of North Dakota. And a lot of them, Stutsman County, where that is from, is mostly barns, less than 5,000 people. So how that happened is that in the United States, Obama stopped it, but of course Trump has restarted it, is that they were surplusing military equipment to civilian police forces. Really, really dangerous precedent in terms of your civil rights when you use the military on your civilians, but that is what happened in North Dakota to our people. The piece of equipment to the left is called an LRAD, long-range acoustic device, intended to blow your eardrums out. So our people were heavily covered. That's what we were, heavily covered as we stood our ground, So I want to say I'm really proud to be a water protector. That's what I am. I'm a water protector, and I'm proud of my people for standing up to all this. I'm proud. And even this, this is when they burned, our villages. And in here, this is a man named O'Shea, and he set that fire behind him. He set that fire because he wanted this, he didn't want them to take it, and so they burned it themselves. But I'm never going to forget that picture. I'm never going to forget what it was like leaving Standing Rock. And for us, it was really a Selma moment, this moment when, everything stopped and you could really, see and face the fact that the rights of corporations have superseded the rights of individuals and the rights of humans, certainly the rights of Mother Earth. That's what we saw there at Standing Rock. And, you wonder what it was all about. And this is, I'm an economist by training. I spend all my time on this geeky stuff a lot, but this is, typical oil well production in the Bakken. It's not unlike it in northern British Columbia too. We're at this point where it's called the bottom of the barrel. fracking, it's extreme extraction. When you've run out of the readily accessible oil and you start doing crazy stuff like blowing up the bedrock of Mother Earth, putting 620 chemicals down there, and, shooting up some stuff. And so the average well only lasts 5 years. And then they got to reinvest. Super expensive. That's why it's so super expensive, is that there's no, this is the bottom of the barrel. And so, what really pissed me off about the Dakota, I call it the Dakota excess pipeline, is that this guy named Lynn Helms, who's the North Dakota Commissioner of Mines, in 2016 he said, there's 900,000 barrels a day of oil coming out of the Bakken. And that oil was coming out by pipeline and by rail. And he said in 2017 we're going to have 900,000 barrels of oil coming out of the Bakken. That's because the Bakken has crashed. 70% drop in drilling rigs in the Bakken. And so the question is why, if you were going to have the same amount of oil going out of there in 2016 as in 2017, why do you need a 570,000 barrel per day pipeline? And why do you got to shove it down our throat? What I want to say is, I heard that we're just south of Saskatchewan. But we call North Dakota the Deep North. But we might even be a little bit, we're kind of like on par with Saskatchewan or a little bit more. But, what is it all about, guys? Why are they justifying these pipelines? I mean, this is before Standing Rock. This is white people took out this billboard. They're like sex trafficking in the oil fields is going on. We need to talk about this in North Dakota. Courageous thing to do in North Dakota, where there's so much, there's been a lot of hating and, a lot of bad things happened in North Dakota. And they ended up being the way they are. And, this is what they look like too. This is, what I really like is there's a movie called Welcome to Leith, which is about North Dakota. And it's about that the neo-Nazis bought a town. Because what happened in North Dakota is that in the 50s and the 40s, people started leaving. And they moved to like California and nice places, warm places, Minneapolis. They just left. And so they left North Dakota and kept depopulating it. And so there's towns that have nobody in them. And so the Nazis went out and bought this one town. And this is their flag. And then some Lakota women grabbed their flag, captured their flag, and burned it for them. So I want to say, it's what it's like in our territory. So I want to talk a little bit about where we're at. So the battle over the Dakota Access Pipeline is a part of a much larger battle. I'm not going to give you guys a long lesson because you know this, but in my lifetime, I like the rest of you, I'm 58 years old, and in my lifetime, I've consumed half the world's known oil. I've partied, I've had a great time, and this is where we are. So that means that that's what's left is not easy to get, right? I got some, I drove around, I went to drive-ins, flew around, drank some of that Fiji water. Any of you ever drink that? It's like gotta have the highest carbon footprint in the world, right? Like I just think I should get some water from Fiji. Like what kind of country, what kind of first world privilege is that, right? I feel like I need water from Fiji. I was like, drink your tap water. Anyway, excuse me, I digress. So that's how I consumed all that oil, right? Being frivolous, shipping stuff around. That's what I did. Y'all did it with me. We partied, we had a pretty good time, right? Basically what I'm saying is I want a graceful transition out of it, right? Like thank you to the fossil fuels, time to move on. I want a graceful transition. I don't want to like crash my way out. Because this is what it's looking like right now, and y'all know this. We're in this place of extreme extraction. What extreme extraction is this is fracking from the air. Right? That's the busting up of the bedrock of Mother Earth. That's fracking. It's extreme behavior. Extreme behavior is blowing off the top of 500 mountains in Appalachia to sell some coal to India. That's extreme behavior, right? Extreme behavior is drilling 20,000 feet under the ocean and hoping that's going to work out for you until you get something like the Deepwater Horizon, right? Or a big oil spill because you think you're so smart. And extreme extraction is the tar sands. That's extreme extraction. And so I point that out because I think that we are faced with the fact that basically North America is a giant junkie. I don't know how else to put it, and just to be, real about it, but, the United States consumes a great deal of oil, but if you actually, there's only one country that consumes more energy per capita than the United States. And you know which country that is? Canada. Go Canada. You know, so my point is that we've developed this super inefficient economy that's predicated on this mass infusion of oil. We've developed this like psychological addiction to this level of inefficiency and this level of entitlement. And we do crazy stuff to get our fix. You know? And so it's, you know, that's what it's like. It's like living with an addict. There's this like rationalizing of it. It's like, yeah, it's okay, like if they're super racist and we destroy everything in that area, we'll just call it a national sacrifice area. It's okay, right? You know, it's like super insane behavior, you know, and I just want to say, should not let addicts make your public policy. Shouldn't let addicts write your public policy, you know? Bad policy comes out of addiction. You know, so that's what I'm saying is, you know, and it's everywhere. This is, you know, Navajo Nation, you know, making some bad policy down there. We're not immune from it. You know, colonialism or however you want to call it, it's like, you know, the Navajo Nation itself is a giant fossil fuel producer. You know, and a lot of that stuff was put in our territory, 5 full coal-fired power plants. You know, those guys at one point exported enough energy to fuel the needs of the state of New Mexico for 32 years. Yet 85% of their houses had no electricity, right? Oh, I'm telling you, but you guys are in Canada, same thing happens here. Same exact thing happens here in those northern communities. You know, I used to live up in James Bay. And I know exactly what it's like to have diesel generators and a giant hydro project. Welcome to Canada, you know. We all know this is going on unless we've been watching Fox News. We assume you guys are not watching Fox News, but this is what's going on in your ocean. This is what climate change looks like in an Alaska native village called Kivalina, falling into the ocean. The estimate was about 40 million a couple years ago to fix this baby up. You know, who's going to pay the estimated cost of climate change? I understand it's 20% of world GDP is what it's estimated to cost us in a few years. That's why all those insurance agencies are worried. You know, that's why everybody's worried. But you know, this village is the last one going to get their stuff fixed up, right? This is, was this Fort McMurray fires? Yeah, I just got this from Ariel today. And then this is your ocean on acid, you know? So I'm, you know, you guys know this stuff. You guys know this stuff. So this is our moment to do something about it. And so what I want to say is that we're part of this larger movement. And, you know, I feel like in the United States that Mr. Trump and the unenlightened and the Windicos, they took the political system, but they didn't take the economic system. They don't have control over the economic system. They have a lot of fabulous plans, but actually they can't accomplish everything. And so what I'm thinking is that we got to look at the economics of some of this like at some basic level. And so, you know, there's a lot of increasing debt and divestment in that, and a lot of stupid decisions are made. And I just want to point out that Canada itself, you know, this has always bothered me. You guys are a petro-state, right? You know, this is the relationship of your Canada and U.S. exchange rates to the oil price. You know, the price of oil directly affects the value of your dollar in relationship to the United States, right? So I come up here, I'm like, hey, guess tar sands ain't doing so good, huh? You know, I mean, it's like a crazy thing, and I feel like saying, time to diversify. And that's what someone would say to y'all. You know, time to like evolve, time to move on so that the price of your, you know, that your exchange rate is not tied to your price of tar sands, you know. Your economy is so ingrained with that staples economy. But, you know, y'all, everybody acts like these guys are so smart, and I really don't think they're all that smart. So here is some, you know, this is some investor review of the big three in the United States, Exxon, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips. Now, those guys are supposed to be pretty smart, right? So here in 2011, they had $80.4 billion in net income. They was doing pretty good. They was feeling pretty sweet. But look what happened here. You know, by 2016, what do they got? $3.7 billion in net income, right? These guys are the smart guys, right? And I'm looking at this saying, you know, so look at Exxon itself, $40.1 billion in net income in 2011, down to about $2.7 billion in net income in 2016. You know, that's like not, they like miss memo. You know what I'm saying? This is like you miss the memo if you lost that much. And so my point in this is like, look, it's like if I was the CEO of Exxon and I went from $40.1 billion in net income down to $2.8 billion in net income, do you think I would still have my job? No, I would not have my job. I would have been fired by the board of directors, but I would get hired by the smartest guy in the world because my name would be Rex Tillerson, and I would be the U.S. Secretary of State. So what I think is like these guys act like they are the smartest guys in the world, but I would suggest that they are not. So she's not the smartest either. This is my sister. I had a bad day, but she's really terrifying. So I just like to point this out. This is us riding with the Cowboys and Indians Alliance against the Keystone Pipeline, And her name's Lorna Haynes, and she was in the 60s sweep. She comes from northern Canada. And when that settlement comes down for that compensation, she should probably get some. Her PTSD is very high, and she was at Standing Rock and got shot. So you don't want to mess with her at this point in her life. So we're out there riding with the Cowboys and Indians, and and we're right there on Washington Mall, riding down the street. And I want to say, if anybody here rides, a place you don't want to ride is Washington, D.C. It's like, first of all, there's like all these cops and sirens and lights, and then there's people that want to take your picture. But she's like next to this really badass-looking guy, but I feel like she is like way more badass than him. So I generally say, if you don't want to talk to me, you may speak with my sister. And that has worked many occasions, but we got to keep her under wraps a little bit. But so this is part of our analysis I want to look at. So this here, you all know this figure. We can't let this happen in the 2 degrees because this gets into climate crazy, right? And then this is how many gigatons we can actually consume or burn and not get above the 2 degrees, right? And this is 565 gigatons. I think about 240 gigatons are actually in the tar sands, if I recall correctly. And I don't actually know how much 565 gigatons is, but it's a lot. You know what I'm saying? Is when you get into giga things, that's like a tremendous amount of combusting, right? So 565 gigatons. Now this is the problem, is that this is 2,795 gigatons is the amount of fossil fuels that is held in reserves by Syncrude, Exxon, BP, Shell, ConocoPhillips. That's coal, that's tar sands, that's every fossil fuel. That's the amount that is held in their reserves. And one of the challenges that we face, because we have to change the paradigm, frankly, is that, in business schools, reserves are considered assets, corporate assets. This is considered an asset of a corporation, and everybody in this room knows that this is not an asset, but this is a liability. It's a liability. And so, in each business school in Canada, in business schools all over the United States, they are still teaching a paradigm which it is the Windigo paradigm of economics. That's exactly what it is. A Windigo is a cannibal who eats everything. And we are watching a system which eats its mother. We are watching a system which eats its lifeblood. And we are teaching and replicating that paradigm in business schools and in colleges continuously. It's like time to move on. Time to move on. So this is what moving on looks like. A few of the pictures of it. So this is when they closed down the power plant in Laughlin, Nevada, Mojave Generating Station, about 8 years ago. The SO2 emissions, the fines and the charges were put in an escrow account. And we used some of that money, with some money from Honor the Earth, to put up this project on, we just solarized the tribal college. And so I just point this out. This next little part is a little bit about how, my theory is if we could do it, anybody could do it. And because we realize in my community and a lot of our other communities that no one's going to do anything for us. I've been waiting a long time for people to fix stuff. They don't fix it. So you look around your community and you say, who's going to take care of this? And someone has to step forward. This is what it looks like. You do this. This is my community. This is who I work for. This is our wild rice, And if you want to talk about what a sustainable economy looks like, think about harvesting on the same lake for 8,000 years. That is millions and millions of pounds of wild rice that have sustained our people for as long as our people have existed. That is what a sustainable economy looks like. And that is the economy that is, at risk. I just think he's super cute. I just can't bear to take him out of my PowerPoint. It's my PowerPoint, right? So in our plan, we have to relocalize our food too. So I don't even want to look at northern stores. It's like 7,000 miles. But in the United States, the average meal travels 1,400 miles from farmer to table. You guys in British Columbia, I really hate calling it British Columbia. You know that. It's like, but anyway, in this territory here, you can produce a lot of your own food locally. And everybody here knows that, the integration of the food economy and the fossil fuel economy is heavy. We are slathering fossil fuels on our food. We're transporting them and we're wrapping them in fossil fuels. And so part of what we have to do is to deconstruct that relationship. That is part of the answer to climate change. That is part of the answer to addressing the addiction. Because people say, like, how are you gonna do this? And I'm like, well, we're gonna work on eating locally. So, that is part of this. It's like, and this is, part of what it looks like. Ruben told a little bit of the story. I grow this corn variety here. This is called a Bear Island Flint. I grow hominy corn varieties, and I'm, really interested in them. This is called a Pawnee Eagle corn. Is that like cool looking or what? I don't grow that, but there's a long story with that corn. But this corn here, we grow. First, what I have to say is to give recognition to my father, and as Ruben said, he is not a highly educated man in a Western system, but he was a highly educated man in Indigenous thinking. And he came to see me, he went to school to 8th grade. He came to see me at Harvard one day, and he was like proud of me, but he said to me, Winona, I don't want to hear your philosophy if you can't grow corn. That's what he told me. And so I have been a corn grower for most of my adult life, but it took me a long time to figure that out. But, I owe a lot of my thinking to corn. And even to a seed itself. Because a seed is about possibility. A seed believes that it will grow into something beautiful and there will be more seeds. That's what I always remember. A seed believes or it would not be there. So I grow this variety, hominy corn varieties, also known as pasole. They have about twice the protein and half the calories of market varieties. They rock the B vitamins, are super high and a lot of other really great things. And when I first grew my corn, it grew about this tall, and I thought I'd failed, but I had they had put on ears, so I was like, okay. But what I realized is that in my territory, it didn't need to get tall because we have big winds. And so my corn was frost resistant, and my corn was drought resistant because it didn't need a lot. And my corn was also wind resistant because when the big winds came through, they blew over Monsanto's varieties, but they did not blow over our varieties. So, it is a time to plant for climate change. It is a time to plant and remember those seeds that we have. This Pawnee Eagle corn is grown by the Pawnees as one of their most traditional and sacred corns. But I say that because our food, and our stories, in the Pawnee culture, the man descended from the sky in a buffalo robe, and the woman descended from the sky in a corn husk. And that is how their people were created. So I say that because that is the deep reverence we have for our relatives, the deep reverence we have for our corn, but all of our relatives. And that is something that I think everybody at some level appreciates, the sacredness of these beings. So I was feeling all kind of not successful in my corn, and then I met my good friend Frank Kutka, and look at how short his corn is. Right? He's growing in North Dakota. And in North Dakota, they don't have any water either. So I'm just saying is like rethink what we grow local. Pull up, you really don't need a lawn. You don't need a lawn. I don't want to tell you all that, but I guess that the U.S. built, what the U.S. spends on lawns is the entire GDP of Haiti. You know what I'm saying? It's like grow grow some food, you can. And then move to renewables. I need this map in Canada. I saw your maps today. You know, there's got to be a Canadian equivalent of this map. But turns out that Indian reservations are the windiest place in the United States. I don't know why that is, but that's what we are. And so, you know, my reservation has class 4 wind. You know, the Blackfeets have like class 7. But, you know, the future needs to be in these forms of renewables. And energy justice looks like we don't get someone else's project shoved down our throats, but that we are partners or we own our projects and we decide where they are. That's what justice looks like. That's what justice looks like. This is the first big wind project in the United States, deep water wind, 90 megawatts in Massachusetts. It was like a big evolution for Massachusetts, first successful wind project. This is, people say you can't meet the future demand out of renewables or can't meet present demand out of renewable energy. I always say, why would you want to? Because if between point of origin and point of consumption, we waste 57% of our energy. I have no idea how much you waste in Canada, but in Minnesota, there's one 80-year-old coal generator. And I'm like, my mother is 84. That power plant's the same age as my mother. My mother is in robust shape. But an 84-year-old coal generator is not in robust shape. Your grids are antiquated. The United States has a D in energy infrastructure. I'm not sure what yours is, but what I'm saying is that everything leaks and hemorrhages. So why would you want to meet that demand when that demand is based on a huge amount of inefficiency? What you would want to do is to be a smart country, like maybe Denmark or Germany, and relocalize, get efficient, you know, in your sources. And this is what, you know, in clean energy, it has nuclear in there. I don't know how to take that out. I need some person to help me. But this is the memo that, you know, the tar sands guys are missing. The divestment movement is investing heavily into renewables. And the divestment movement, you know, including this last week, what New York City and the New York pension funds are divesting. They're moving because our survival is dependent upon this action. And of course, clean technology, thank you, Zipporah. This is from Zipporah's, is much less, and increasingly the price has gone down. So divestment must be matched with investment into an enlightened path. And that's what I'm saying. You know, if you've got some money, do the right thing with it. Put your heart where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to tell you a little story about my village. This is my village. There's a film came out a couple of years ago called The Seventh Fire. This is a snapshot from the film, the burning of one of our buildings there. But, you know, it's a story. It's kind of, I think it's called poverty porn. When someone does a story about the meth epidemic in your village, and that's the only picture people have of your village. It's just like, you guys look rough, you know? So we didn't like that film too much, and so we decided to create this project called the Eighth Fire Project, which is based on our vision. So we took our HUD housing project and we started painting it because it was tagged up. And we wanted it to look like who we were, and my daughter calls these the mean girls. But, you know, it's a tough community, man, but this is what we did. This is solar at my house. This is solar thermal panels. We're just about to start manufacturing solar thermal panels in my village. We bought the intellectual property rights, and we plan on putting them on most of the houses in our territory. Saves about 20% of your heating bill. This would be pretty applicable probably in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. You know, but it's south-facing walls. It's kind of the low-hanging fruit in the era of, and in the places where there is fuel poverty. Fuel poverty is when you don't know if you're going to be able to eat or heat in the wintertime, which is a lot of northern reserves, right? So this is our answer to this. This is what we did to, you know, make our village look better. This artist's name is Anthony Sewell. And this is our water tower in our village. And so, you know, I don't want to be stuck. I don't want to live in an ugly place. I want what, you know, we're supposed to get, Minoba Mataziwan, the good life. And it's going to be beautiful, so we'll make that in my village. Nobody would really, you know, vote on us making this happen, you know. But like I said, look around, no one's going to help that village. No one's ever going to trickle down there. Nothing is going to trickle down to my village. So we just go do it ourselves. So this is what we want. You know, and I think about this because the Dakota Access Pipeline itself, if instead of spending, you know, $3.8 billion on that pipeline, they could have bought 323 2-megawatt wind turbines with that money, and 160,000 solar thermal panels, and 61,000 8 kilowatts of solar to put on the houses in North Dakota. What is energy security? What is it? You know, to me, that's what energy security is. Not a pipeline that cuts through your territory. Energy security is a diversified local energy economy. That's what energy security looks like to me. And then it is infrastructure. You know, as I said, you know, I'm not opposed to pipes, but I want pipelines for people and not for oil companies. And everybody knows Melina, you know, and Melina and Crystal here too. Melina inspired me with this project, this 20 kilowatt project in Little Buffalo, which is, you know, what she did for her master's thesis at the University of Victoria. I like that idea, you know, don't just write about it or talk about it, just do it. Just do it. You know, a lot of intellectuals talk a lot and think a lot. Just do it sometimes, you know. It reaffirms knowledge is learned through doing, not just thinking about it and reflecting. You know, so she's been a big inspiration to me. Now I got about a 4-minute video that I'm going to show you of this little story. So you saw my sister Lorna on that horse, right? Well, you didn't know she was on a horse, right? So my sister Lorna and I are riding, and we got off our horses. We got off our horses, and we went to our teepees, which were on the Washington Mall. We had a teepee on the Washington Mall. Doesn't that sound cool? I just like saying I had a teepee on the Washington Mall. So anyway, I have a teepee on the Washington Mall. I'm hanging out in my teepee, and cool people are hanging out in my teepee, like Neil Young's hanging out in my teepee, and Daryl Hannah's hanging out with my people, and, you know, and all these cool people are coming in and out of my teepee and hanging there with my 2 then 15-year-old sons in my teepee. And I get off my horse, and this guy comes in he like, you know, knocks on the door. He says, comes in and he says, "Ms. LaDuke." I said, "Hello," and my 2 sons are sitting there, and he says, "Would you like to go for a ride in my car?" And my sons are like, "Mom." And I was like, you know, I'm like, why would I go for a ride in this guy's car? Like such like a pickup line from like the 80s or 70s or something, you know? Like looking at this guy, I was like, you know, he says, "It's a Tesla." And I was like, "Oh yes, I'd like to go for a ride in your car." So you know, my sons were like, "Oh my God, Mom." And so I walk out of my teepee into a red 4-door Tesla. And away we went. You know, and basically what I'm saying is that that's what I want. Right? I want to walk out of my teepee into a Tesla. Right? So I'm saying, let's just do that. Let's just do that. You know, don't let them tell you that this is like this interim stage energy. It's not. Time to move on, you know. Tesla's being followed by what? Ford, GM, and Volvo, and the electric cars, right? Why would you want to hang out in a combustion engine? You wouldn't want to hang out with a combustion engine, right? It's only 16% efficient. An electric engine is 65% efficient. So what kind of dumb society drives around in 16% efficient vehicles? Canada. I'm right with you, but I'm saying let's move on. Don't you think we should just move on? Yeah. Get efficient, move out of our teepees into a Tesla. Okay, so I got off my horse, and these guys called the Yes Men got on these horses. So this is my little tribute to Gitz and the Yes Men.
We knew there was a way to pull the plug on big oil. But we needed some help. Ever since we met Gitz, we'd wanted to do something together. Posing as government bigwigs, we would infiltrate a Homeland Security conference and announce that the USA was outlawing fossil fuels and replacing them with renewables. And the best part? The new wind and solar power plants would be owned by native tribes as partial reparations for genocide.
To actually have white people wearing bands that say native headdress, and instead of a feather, a windmill, This is us making fun of the American ideal of what it is to be Indian.
This would truly be a second Thanksgiving. I told the conference that I represented General Colin Powell, and they were pumped to have him speak.
So our speakers are running just a tad late. We're not going to worry about it. General Colin Powell is coming to speak to us, and he's bringing a couple of colleagues.
General Powell, of course, would not show up, but his colleagues were nearly there.
Oh my God, you guys. Is this not going to be a total giveaway?
No.
Is there a way to, like, you know, maybe to make it a little less like it is? Who's the other presentation? Yeah.
Well, the Admiral, and he's followed by the Deputy of the Secret Service. So you've got two, like, exceedingly senior people.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to just confirm with them because he's so late. I'm beginning to wonder what's going on.
Mr. Benedict Waterman. Hi, I'm Barbara Alexander. I'm so glad to meet you.
Hello. Hi. I'm nervous. Me and Tito are sitting down. We're trying to make small talk. Have you tried yoga?
No, not yet. I need to. I'm having a hard time finding the yoga pants that'll fit.
That's the most weight I've ever seen on a human being.
He's a scientist, so it's...
Does he do like a lot of where like somebody went?
I don't know. That is a bad hair day.
These guys weren't exactly tree-hugging eco-freaks. We had an aspiring Republican congressman, a two-star general, lots of defense contractors, and weird security guards in trench coats. How would they react to an energy revolution?
Our first speaker is Undersecretary of Policy Implementation at the Department of Energy, Mr. Benedict Waterman.
On behalf of the Department of Energy, I'm very excited to announce today a great new plan that will do nothing less than convert the United States energy grid into one that's powered entirely by renewable sources. As the dire reality of climate change becomes more and more inescapable, people will take the future into their own hands, and historically we know that popular resistance is a force that can only with difficulty be countervailed. A revolutionary energy program today is easier than a real revolution tomorrow. By 2030, America will produce 100% of our energy from renewables, establishing us once again as a global leader in confronting the supreme challenge of climate change. We're excited to be working with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and some of the largest tribes from Arizona to the Dakotas to site major wind and solar facilities that will provide a large chunk of America's power. The tribes will own these facilities. It'll provide an enormous stimulus to the economy and great resilience in the face of future threats. It's time for a second Thanksgiving.
I am Dana Slowhorse. I'm the Director of Industrial Development for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I am a member of the Winona Nation. Joining me is my nephew here. He's a fire chief, he's a war chief, a water chief, and he's actually also a midwife. He helps young mothers. It's a long sordid history between the Americans and the indigenous peoples. And it always hasn't been a beneficial relationship, at least not to us. For the first time, we have a voice, and we will own, truly own, this new energy production. And that's progress. And it'll build us a stronger economy, a brighter future. It will give something to our children. There was a lot of work done on Benedict's task, because we want to acknowledge and honor that. And so I actually went and killed a deer. I tanned the hide myself. Give you this gift.
That was good.
Come on, this grand occasion between our two peoples. We want to acknowledge this with a round dance. I encourage everybody to join us together. form a circle around all this? It's possible.
All the way around.
Yeah, we can do all the way around. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me. I composed this song for this occasion. I made it a simple song so we can sing it together because it's not just my song, it belongs to all of us. Way out hey, way out ho, way out ho, way out hey, way out ho, way out ho, way out hey now, way out hey now, way out ho ho ho, way out ho ho ho. The sun gon' shine, the sun gon' shine, the wind gonna blow, the wind gonna blow. That's all we need. That's all we need to continue to grow. To continue to grow. Way out ahead. Way out ahead.
It would be worthwhile, I think, get an opportunity to perhaps, chat with you or your staff, or whoever you deem appropriate.
What kind of effect do you expect this to have on the share price of energy companies today?
This is ultimately going to benefit the economy tremendously.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
How did the midwifery come about for you?
So, yeah, I have a lot of sisters and
a lot of grateful nieces and nephews.
Definitely.
So we're part of Northrop Grumman. We're a large business, but very interested in seeing how we can support this novel cause.
It's fantastic. So excited.
Yeah, this is outstanding. I feel really good. It's a very emotional day.
Great.
I was surprised to see someone from Northrop Grumman acting so excited. You weren't talking about weapons, you're talking about renewables.
You know, surprisingly enough, most people are not megalomaniacally insane. Even people that work for Northrop Grumman. And if they're given the opportunity to do what they actually believe in their hearts is the right thing, they go with it.
The fact that we could get all these people that we think of as being from the dark side to dance in support of renewable energy is that there are very few people who actually want us to continue on this fossil fuel path. And we have to force our leaders to actually do what we need them to do, and then people will follow. Except for a few oil company execs.
Good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. Don't forget that song now. You sing it anytime.
I thought you'd like that, and I love those guys. But, that was pretty much good for pulling that off, huh? I was like, you go, guys. They keep doing it. We got a few ideas for them. So this is, just kind of in closing, this is, what the face of resistance looks like. It has a lot of faces, but I have to say, a lot of courage. A lot of courage in our women water protectors, a lot of courage in our communities, a lot of courage in our men and women. And you got to keep fighting these guys, and stand strong and keep your courage. That's what I'd say. But always keep your eye on where you're going, and know where we're going. And, I want to say to the Enbridge Corporation, a long time I said to them, they closed down this line. They aren't going to run that sandpiper, but they came back with line 3 now, right? So now I'm facing 915,000 barrels a day in exactly the same corridor. And I told them the same thing, we're going to fight you and you're not going to get this line. They did not get the last one, and now there are more people that are determined, and there are more people that are standing, and there's like 5 tribes that intervened and a whole bunch of individuals. And the state of Minnesota, a couple of months ago, said they did not, the Department of Commerce said they did not recommend issuing a permit to the Enbridge Corporation for that pipeline. I gotta say, we're gonna need you to stand with us, though. And if you didn't get a chance to get arrested at Standing Rock, you can come to Minnesota this summer if they issue that permit, right?
Stay right here and do it.
Right, or you can do it right here. And I just want to say, this is something here. This picture I took a couple of days. This is actually my sister. She was chasing that real tall one. She's chasing this, and this is what it looks like when a pipeline leaves. This is the Enbridge Corporation packing up their pipes and shipping them out. They had to take them out truck by truck and put them on some trains, and I was trying to figure out who wants to buy a used oil pipeline, But what I told the Enbridge Corporation many times is I said, we don't want your pipes, but people in Flint need pipes. You know, Flint has had 1,500 days of no running water or no water in their system that works, you know. But in Canada, you have 151 Indigenous communities with potable water advisories in them. You know, places like Shoal Lake in Manitoba, you know, 2-3 decades of that, right? So what I'm saying is that it's not that we don't, you know, it's not that we don't like pipes, but we want pipes for people, not for oil companies. And I feel like there's a lot of infrastructure in Canada that could be built, that could make a difference. So I want to say, let's do this, you know. Your battle here is strong, and we are all looking at you. We learned from you guys when you fought Enbridge before. You know, you guys are tough people. You fought off Enbridge the last time, and that inspired us in our battle when you defeated the Northern Gateway Pipeline. Now I say we stand with you to stop Kinder Morgan, you know. Become coast protectors, all of you. This is your battle. This is your time, you know. And I think about it because, you know, there's these guys down in South Dakota on Pine Ridge Reservation, this group called the Thunder Valley Community Development Corporation, and I was their, you know, spiritually based community. And I ask them, I look at their annual report, and I see this quote in their annual report. I look at it and I say, can I borrow that quote, you know, or use that because I'm a writer? And they said, yeah, but I got to tell you, he said, Auntie, I got to tell you where that come from. It's Nick Tilson told me this. He said, we was in sweat lodge. We were in sweat ceremony. And we went in there and we was getting ready to pray. It was a bunch of Oglala men, and he said, but some of us were, we were talking some smack. Tribal council did this guy didn't do this, and we was kind of talking like that. I just want to let you know that, you know, sometimes we falter on our way to being sacred. So they were talking a little smack, you know, and then they got in the lodge. He said, and this is what happened. The spirit came into the lodge. And this is what the spirit said to those men. The spirit said, how long are you going to let others determine the future for your children? Are we not warriors? When our ancestors went into battle, they did not know what the consequences were going to be. All they knew is that if they did nothing, things would not go well for their children. Do not operate out of a place of fear. Operate out of a place of hope, because with hope everything is possible. The time is now, the movement's here. So that spirit said to them. So I think about that. We are way cooler than them. This is a woman leaving Standing Rock. I don't even know who that beautiful woman is, but look how proud she is of standing up. You know, look how proud she is. You know, remember how beautiful our people are and how courageous they are, and how when we work together we can make, you know, great changes. This is our woman water protector. She is in downtown Duluth. Duluth is like our version of whether it is Winnipeg or Thunder Bay. We lose a lot of women there, missing and murdered. And we are invisible in Duluth. But now we are 60 feet by 40 feet in downtown Duluth. That's our woman water protector on the side of a building in downtown Duluth. So, you know, I think of her a lot and how the tide is changing. And, you know, where we are in Minnesota, it's tough. It's tough terrain, but our picture is the same as all of yours. So as I think of where we're going, you know, this is our time. Time to change our economy from our staples extraction Wendigo economy to something where we can survive for maybe, let's just take a couple hundred years. That'd be cool, huh? You know, my people live here thousands. And we want to know, like, how come people act like they don't want to live here 1,000 years? You know? So change that economy so it looks something like that. Get the infrastructure you need in this country for people, not for oil companies. You know, we talk about, you know, when we look at these guys, particularly, used to do the same thing with Harper, or look at the same thing with Trump and say, you know, there's all these people talk about we're the 99%, right? There's the 1% that controls things and the 99%. And I'm like, act like it then. If we're the 99%, act like it. You know, grow our food, change our economic systems, change our energy systems, buy, you know, renewables. Be enlightened. Act like it. Act like we're the 99%. Do not relinquish your power to the 1%. Remember who we are, you know, because in the end, what we know is that the laws of the Creator are the highest laws. The laws of Mother Earth are the highest laws, and it's our opportunity to live in accordance with those laws. It's our time. Miigwech. Thank you for your time.